So today we will cover the topic for construction project team. Okay, so we will discuss who are the parties involved in the construction industry. As what we discussed yesterday, if you remember, yesterday we have discussed about the development process. We have the development preparation, we have development um, preparation, we have construction stage, we have maintenance, and we also have the disposal. So you have to know what are the flow of the construction. Then after that, you have to know who are the parties involved in different stages. But of course, at the beginning, I will explain to you the overall project team that is actually involved. But our focus for this subject is until before the construction started. So I would say it's until the contract had been awarded to the contractor. Okay, awarding the contractor means they are contractual relationship when the client, remember yesterday we discussed, maybe you become the client, appoint the suitable contractor for that particular project. Okay, so if you refer to this project team, I have to move this one. Okay, this is the learning outcome. You must be able to differentiate the duties of the owner, the designer, and also the construction team. If we are the QS, we are one of the consultant. We can be one of the consultant. You have to also understand whether the scenario is you are in the traditional procurement method or you are in the new procurement method. Traditionally, traditionally, if you are working on behalf of the client, you may act as the QS. If you are the QS, working as the project manager of that particular project under the client company, or else the client may appoint the independent consultant QS to become one of the team member in that particular project. Okay, we also have to know whether you have to appoint maybe the contractor from the beginning, from the design until the completion, or maybe you have appointed the engineer earlier, then only after that you appoint the contractor as the contractor only. Because we have the scenario where we did not have the designer independently, but you appoint the contractor as the single entity to do everything. So the contractor has to find their own design team, then they have to construct at the same time. We call that one as the design and build. So basically, as the overall, you need to know first what is the pattern of the construction, what is the pattern of the contract before you identify the construction parties. Okay, so in this lecture, we are also going to explain and discuss the role of the other supporting project participant. You may have the ID, interior designer. You may see that the banker is needed, the supplier of the material. Then, what are the contractual relationship of the project participant according to the type of the contract that I did mention previously, and describe the role of the project for the different type of the procurement system. This is in general only because this one will be covered in another subject under procurement method or procurement system in the construction industry. Okay, so this is the learning outcome, what I would like to expect from my student. Okay, so basically, this is the example as what I did mention previously. You can see here, number one, we have traditional method. Number two, we have design and build. This is considered as new method. Traditionally, the owner will appoint the designer at the beginning. Then only you appoint the contractor here, MC. But the new method, design and build project, you normally appoint the contractor as design and build a contractor, where the contractor have to find their own design team. They will also construct, they will also become the supplier, they will do everything on their own. So that is under design and build project delivery. If you look at the word project delivery, this one also known as procurement method. Okay, in explaining the role and responsibility for the parties involved, basically you have to understand at least these two method of project delivery, or we call this one as two method of procurement system. Right, I move to the next one. In terms of the procurement system, you can see this is one of the traditional way. Okay, look at the example that I show here, the design team. Who are the design team? The architect. The design team here are structural engineer, civil engineering engineer, M&E engineer. All engineers are the designer. When you look at the word designer, in your mind, you have to keep in your memory that designer always responsible to prepare the design. And when we talk about design means the construction drawings. Okay, when you look at the role of the QS, as what we discussed yesterday, you can see quantity surveyor always play around with the price. Okay, we also will give the advice in terms of contract, okay, contract. We also will give the advice if the project is required to be prepared by using what method of tender, who will be the suitable contractor. So the advice of the tender, the advice of the contract, the advice on in terms of the price will be catered by the quantity surveyor. Okay, look at the second one, main contractor. Main contractor may have their own subcon, may have their own supplier, and may have their own specialist. Okay, in fact, another word of the contractor, especially in UK, they call this one as builder. So if you see the word contractor, builder, they are the same thing. And if you see sometimes in the diagram, you see the word MC. MC means main contractor. Okay, so under main contractor, you have basically two. One is domestic contractor, another one is nominated subcontractor. Anyone know what is the difference between these two? Anyone know between these two? What will be the difference if you learn in the previous subject? So Wei, do you know what is the difference? If you are the contractor, sometimes you need the specialist to do the work. Okay, so you may appoint the specific contractor to do that. So the main contractor will appoint another group of people to become the contractor. So that is what we call as that is what we call as subcon. Sub means it will be working and carry out the works under you. Then at the same time, if you would like to appoint the specialist sometimes, okay, no, specialist normally for the M&E works, then you may suggest the name, but the name is suggested by the client. So every time the name is suggested by the client, nominated means named by the client, we call this one as nominated subcon. Even though the relationship is, there is no direct contractual relationship between nominated subcontractor and the client, but because the subcontractor is named by the client, we call this one as nominated subcontractor. Okay, we will go through this one in detail after this. Then you can see here they are supplier, they are specialists. Okay, so this is the general overview. This is the general overview of the construction project team without looking at the procurement method. Okay, without looking at the procurement method, we know that the client is the owner of it can be the owner of the land, it can be the owner of the company, it can be the investor, the owner of the company, the owner of the land, and the client can be more than one. Okay, if they are joint venture project, maybe the client can be more than one. Then under the client, there are a lot of parties involved. Okay, the main contractor, this is what I did mention. If you see the word MC and then subcon can be domestic subcontractor or nominated subcontractor. If you look at the word subcon, this even the word domestic is not being stated, it is also understandable that that one is domestic subcon. Domestic subcon means they will carry out the work on behalf of the main contractor. So the payment of the work will be done by the main contractor. Okay, nominated subcontractor, the suggestion of the subcontractor is by the client. In this case, if you refer to the contractual relationship, you can see that there is no direct relationship between nominated subcon and client, but because the name is nominated by client normally because of the experience. Maybe previously client has experience working with the nominated subcon, So they will name and suggest to the main con. And then in terms of the payment, the nominated subcon will get the payment from the main con. Only in certain scenario, in case the main contractor did not pay nominated subcon, then they may get the money directly from the client. Okay. We also have the supplier, we have the bankers. The bankers here also one of the construction project team because sometimes they are making loan. The client making loan, they are investors from this banker and so on. So bankers also one of the important party to be considered in one of the project team. And then we have the quantity surveyor, we have the landscape architect, we have also general architect. General architect means architect for the building. Landscape, they have their own specialists. For the engineer, we have M&E, mechanical and electrical. CNS are referring to civil and structural engineer. Project manager can be the project manager who work on behalf of the client or the project manager who work on behalf of the main con. If you go and visit the site, for example, the person who handle the construction site known as the project manager. They normally, this is the normal practice. They call this one as a project manager. But we may have the project manager who handle that specific project, who working on behalf of the client. Okay, that one is in general. This is another overview to show the contractual project team and the contractual relationship. That's why you can see the arrow over there. The blue color from, let me see this one, the blue color from the client to the main contractor to show that the client has appointed main contractor as the builder for that particular project. So here we have contractual relationship. So I put here as contract number 1. Okay, and then the main contractor will appoint the subcontractor. So the blue color at the bottom here, you can see this is the the other relationship. Contractual relationship means you have one more contract, NSC and main con, one more contract main con with the subcon, one more contract main con with the supplier. There is no direct relationship between the the professional team with the contract, with the contractor. But they have to listen and see all the information given by the professional team in order to start doing his work. Okay, I give you one example. The contractor may not be able to construct if the drawing is not completed by the architect. You may not be able to design or start your construction work if the foundation is not completely designed by the CNS engineer. M&E engineer will design and provide the information about mechanical work. For example, air conditioning system, sewerage, plumbing, and so on. Okay, and landscape, normally for the landscape, definitely then you may need to have the overview that landscape is not only soft landscape, it also involving the hard landscape like the bench, the pavement. Okay, and then the quantity surveyor will advise any contractual issue before and after the contract after the construction started. So the quantity surveyor is actually the most important person from the beginning until the end. Okay, from the beginning of the development until the project finish, handover, because when you have handover, you also will handle the last payment. Then after that, during the maintenance, you also may be able to contribute in terms of costing. Are you be able to follow everyone? Are you be able to follow Jingler, Kam Sun Chi? Okay, this is another overview. If you look at the issue that we have to take note here, they are teamwork, and then communication is very important. Previously, all the communication through email. Nowadays, we have integrated system, we have BIM, we have modeling that will contribute to the successful completion of the project. Okay, this is another diagram as what I showed you before. There are also scenario where the general contractor or MC have more than one domestic subcontractor, especially if they are dealing with the specialist work. Maybe this subcontractor will carry out the earthwork. Contractor number 2 will carry out the work for the roofing. This one will carry out the work for the brick or the wall. This one for the finishing. Okay, so there are scenario where this one happen. Okay, not necessarily only have one domestic subcontractor. There are possibility to have more than one. Okay, I move to the next one. In terms of the overview, this is what I did mention. The project success are truly depending on the teamwork and communication. Okay, communication in different way, can be by email, can be by modeling, can be by meeting face to face, and so on. Okay, project team overview, you can see the diagram over there, and these are the list of the team that you have to consider, a team member that you have to consider in handling the completion of the in handling the construction project. Okay, in different overview, in overall overview, you can see there are people that you have to deal with the architectural work. Okay, engineering, you may need to have the engineer, assistant engineer. Site development, maybe you need to have the sketch person, or they call it one as the the draftman. Okay, you may need to have the people who is master or expert in landscaping, estimating, QS, scheduling can be QS, can be civil engineer. Procurement is normally by the QS. Legal, you may have the legal advisor, and normally in the construction project, QS is the legal advisor. Finance can be the valuer, can be the QS, can be the estate manager. Then in terms of safety and health, this is where you have to get the, if you would like to get the permission, if you would like to get the standard design, the requirement of the design, we have to go to the safety and health. And also you have to consider the safety officer to be included in the project team, especially at the construction site. And then fabrication and placement, this is normally at the construction site, and testing definitely. These are basic understanding on the team that is required to be considered in the construction industry. They are the key players. This is what also I have been highlighted previously. Okay, I also highlight this one yesterday, if you remember, but yesterday we only highlight the activity. When we discuss about development implementation, you can see we explain in stage number one, for example. Stage number one is where the client will carry out the market research, for example. The client will start searching for the land. The client will start searching whether this project is profitable or not. The client will check whether there are population grouping or not, whether the project is viable or feasible. So you can see here the parties involved in different stages are different. Start from the beginning, definitely the developer must be there, developer or the owner. Or we can say the government, because the government can be the client. Okay, number two, valuer, definitely yes. The research firm, this is for you to carry out maybe some research for the new project, estate manager, and then the financial advisor in case the team member required extra capital, or you need more advisors, or you need more investors. So maybe stage one is necessary to have a financial advisor. I would say the engineer, it depends. So if you have your lecture notes now, you may put star, because at the early stage, engineer may not necessary in the building project. At the first stage, if you handle the project related to the M&E works, or maybe the project related to the infra, maybe engineer is necessary at the first stage. If not, engineer may be only necessary to give the advice at the second stage onwards. Town planner, to check whether that area is suitable to be developed as that particular type of development, maybe for the agriculture, maybe for the residential, and so on. Project manager from the developer side, also one of the party that is required to be appointed. Okay, class. So stage number two is where we go further just before the construction started. Okay, so before the construction started, here you can see the second stage is design stage. So when you have design stage, all the designer must be in, including the ID if they have the detailed design. If you deal with the project for the commercial purposes like hotel, chalet, where the internal design is one of the main concern, then interior designer is necessary to be appointed here. Or maybe internal designer task or responsibility can be carried out by the architect sometimes. Okay, so what you can see the difference here is this one. If I create the annotation for a while, you can see the word authority body. Why you have this? Because you need to make sure that all the design all the design had been approved, or you get the permission from the local authority to carry out the works, and all drawing had been approved by the specific engineer or QS, or the design must be must be signed or must be acknowledged by the engineer. Okay, for the turnkey contract management, this is for the new procurement method. Then you need to have the specific group of people. Construction management applicable. This is also for the new procurement method. Traditionally, you may not have this, but for the new method of the procurement, the last two are considered as necessary. Stage number 3, they are similar, but at this stage, the nominated subcontractor and contractor may involve. At this stage, even though the construction is not started yet, but at this stage, they start to bid to become the contractor. So during the tendering stage, the contractor may bid, okay, I can construct your project for 1 million. Another contractor may say, I will construct your project for 2 million. So the bidding process are there. That's why this group of people also involved at stage number 3. Okay, Jungkit, can you follow? Stage number 3 under tendering stage. This is the scenario where you would like to get the contractor or suitable builder for your project. Okay, right, thank you. Then stage number 4, this is at the actual implementation. So another way we can say this is the post-contract stage or construction contract, where the project manager now is not only project manager from the developer, but also the project manager who work on behalf of the contractor at the construction site to monitor the whole progress of the construction site, and to monitor the whole progress of the construction activity. Okay, at this stage also you can see the construction site staff, construction workers, and they are regulatory bodies. And then you can see the QS from the government or from the client come and check the work progress by the contractor at the construction site. The finances, this one also financial support and advice also may be involved in case the contractor need financial support for that particular project, or maybe you have extra investor and so on. So stage number 5 is handover. After the completion of the project, the handover stage, where the building will be handed over from the contractor to the client. So of course, developer will be one of the party involved. The contractor will give the building to the developer, and at this stage you can see that they are consumer, they are the user, or we can say the occupant for that particular building. Okay, they will be also one of the party that is involved in the maintenance stage if they buy that particular unit or they buy the unit house. Then once you have the maintenance stage, you can see the last one, facilities manager. Okay, facilities manager, normally the person who is responsible to carry out the analysis and the management of the maintenance for that particular building. Normally for the high-rise building or the strata title building, not for the landed single ownership building. Okay, for the landed ownership building, if you buy that house, landed mean, for example, terrace house, maybe double-story building, double-story housing, you have to maintain on your own. But if let's say let's say you buy the unit of the house from condominium, then you may need to consider the involvement of the facilities manager for that particular building for the whole maintenance, because you are sharing the lift, you may share the swimming pool, you may share the other facilities for that high-rise building. This is the example. Okay, Yang Jin Tao, is it okay? Please stop me if I'm talking so fast. Okay, now we are referring to the relationship between the project life cycle and stakeholder involvement. You can see here I also highlight in different way. I show you in different diagram. For example, this is number one, feasibility study. Okay. After that, pre-construction. This is number two. After that, construction started, and after that, handover. Once you have handover, you may have FM here because you have facilities management. So in another overview or diagram, you can see the explanation from this slide. Okay, let's go straight away to the role, responsibility, and obligation of the contracting parties. Okay, we start with the definition. What is the meaning of obligation? Uh, every time you see the word obligation, you as a student also have obligation. We as the human has our own obligation. If I am the mother, I have the obligation to my kids. If you are the client, you have the obligation to carry out your work. So what is the meaning of obligation? It is a contractual obligation arises as a result of the enforceable promise, agreement, or the contract. Let's say you are the client, okay. Yesterday I remember Izu I appointed as the client, and then Jintao, for example, become the contractor. So what is the obligation by the client to Jintao? Client has the obligation to pay to Jintao, isn't it? Obligation means the action to carry out the work when you have the contractual relationship. Jintao is responsible or have the obligation to construct the work to the client. So that is obligation. Can you see the relationship, class? Contractual obligation or responsibility as the result of the promise. Okay, promise, agreement, or the contract. This is actually the flow of understanding the contract. Okay, you can see here the explanation, the constraining power of the promise in the sense of the law. You have to look at the contract, what will be the obligation, and then this is another definition of the obligation. Anything that individual is required to do because of a promise. Once you have the contract, it is a promise of the promise. I promise to pay you, you promise to construct to me. That is the explanation, simple explanation on the obligation. It also refers to a legal or moral duty that individual can be forced to perform. So when we talk about obligation, it is all about performance by both party. Okay, by both party. If you remember the concept of the contract in another subject, once you have the contract with another people, you are the promisor. Okay, and you also consider as promisee. Have you heard this word before, class? Anyone heard this word before? Promiser and promisee. Promiser is the offerer, promisee is the offeree, the person who gives the offer to do something, and promisee is the person who accept the offer. Where if you become promiser and promisee, it become a contract. Okay. Now let's move to the next term. We have to also understand the word power. What is the meaning of power? The ability or capability or capacity to perform or act effectively. For example, what you can do if dot dot dot. For example, what I can do if the contractor did not carry out the works. That is my power as the client. For example, if the another example you can say maybe I give example. Jin Tao is the MC. Okay, whether Jintao has the power to stop the work, okay, whether Jintao has the power to give instruction to the client, whether Jintao has the power to give instruction to the workers, so that is power, okay, and this is to show that you have the ability to give instruction, but it must be you must act effectively. Okay, another word that you have to understand is the word liability. legally obligated, considered as accountable, amenable, answerable, responsible. Okay, something that you have to do but you haven't done yet. For example, a simple example to understand the word liability is you are the student. If you are the student, you have the liability to complete the assignment. Once you complete the assignment, means you already complete your obligation. That is the relationship. If I am the lecturer, means I have the liability to deliver and share the information of the topic. But if I did not carry out the works, means I am not carry out my obligation, and I am liable to complete the task to the student. This is the example for you to understand liability, something that you have to do but you haven't finished it. Okay, legal responsibility for one's act or omission. So what I would like to highlight here before we go to the actual parties involved, there are three things that must be in your mind always. Number one, for you to understand the word responsibility. Responsibility. What is another word of responsibility? What is another word that I mentioned earlier? Obligation. So that is number one. Okay, number two, you have to understand the word power. What you can do if you are in that particular position. Either you can give instruction, whether you can suspend the work if you did not get payment, if you are the corrector, for example. And then the other one is liability. So liability is your responsibility, but you haven't finished your obligation. So that is liabilities. So these three words must be in your mind always to understand the role and responsibility by the construction or contractual parties. Is it okay, everyone? Can you follow?